Woo, 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 woo. Who let the dogs out? Woo, 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 woo. What is up, Internet? Yeah, we're going to start everyone with singing now. This is the only podcast about movies. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd.
Okay, we're going to start it with singing.
Oh, wait, no.
And we're not going to continue.
I'm going to sing the entire podcast.
Great. Okay, we're going to talk to you about a film today about puppies.
Puppies, yay!
Yay! Oh, wait a minute, it's kind of sad, and it's called White God.
White God.
Have you seen it?
I've seen it.
I've seen it.
Now, how did you hear about this film?
You told me to watch it.
Okay, if you didn't have a Shahir Dowd in your life...
Oh. I would watch much less heady films.
I don't think it's a hitty film, but like...
I'm not saying this is.
Yeah, okay.
I'm saying I would, in general, you asked what would happen.
All right. Oh, well, I'm glad. So I heard about this film because I saw a pretty amazing trailer. So...
Wait, you don't watch trailers?
No, I have a thing now. I think I've defined my rule, which is that I watch the first trailer of any movie just so I can find out about it.
You know, you're being pretty wishy-washy on all these rules. I think if we went back to the Terminator podcast a couple weeks ago, you did say that you don't watch trailers.
I try not to watch trailers, but I did watch the trailer for this, and I think if you're listening to this podcast right now and you haven't seen White God, stop for two reasons. One, we're going to spoil everything about White God.
Yep.
Two, do yourself a favor. Go watch the trailer. If you're a dog person, you might really enjoy this trailer. If you liked Planet of the Apes, you might really enjoy this trailer. If the trailer does enough for you, you might really enjoy watching this film.
And I might say with those first two, obviously the third one, if you like the trailer, you might like the film. I think the first two things you said might also mean you don't like this movie.
That's true. I have a friend who's a dog lover. Hi, Keisha and Tehran.
Yeah.
And I'm like 50-50 as to whether they're going to like this movie or not because of the dog-on-dog violence.
Right, and there's some, we'll get to sort of the story of it in a minute, but there are obviously some disturbing parts in this film, or maybe not so obviously, but the second it started, and there's a nice message in the beginning about all the dogs they used found homes and stuff like that, so which is great.
And these dogs were...
all strays.
All stray dogs that were...
In Hungary.
In Hungary. It's a Hungarian film.
Yes.
Shall we set it up? What is this film about?
It's about a young girl who has a dog named, what was his name? Hagen. And like you just want to hug him.
He's a beautiful dog.
He's a cool looking dog.
Yeah.
Who is a mutt, and she lives with her mother normally, but her mother and her new boyfriend are going away somewhere that
Australia.
doesn't matter. MacGuffin Town. It doesn't matter. And she has to go move back in with her father, who was a professor, but now he's a butcher.
He's a meat inspector.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But he was a professor.
He was a professor. He's probably involved in bacteria or something.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So she goes to live with her father. The father doesn't like the dog. They get into a big thing. The girl wants to be with the dog. There's like a tax if you have a mutt in Hungary, apparently. Right?
Well, I'm not sure if it's real or not, but the film kind of plays on this allegory because the dog is a mixed breed dog.
Yeah, it's a mutt.
Kind of like... there's a fair amount of political allegory in this film, and there's a discussion about whether this film is referring to immigrants to Hungary as well. So there's some sort of tax. I don't know if it's real or fictional.
So a neighbor complains because the dog made noise because the father made it sleep in the bathroom, and then the father refused to pay for it, and then a couple things happen. One thing leads to another, and on a car trip, the father just decides to kick the dog, not as the car's moving, just stop the car, kick the dog out, and leave, and basically let the dog loose in the streets of Hungary.
Yeah, and it's kind of then it becomes like Milo and Otis.
Yep. So let's not. This touches on a lot of dog films. Milo and Otis is one that we didn't actually write up here on our dog list. But yeah, this movie overall tries to, I think, hit every sort of dog movie cliche. Does it very well. And then goes a direction of dog movies that I've never seen before, and we can get into that in a little bit. But it's how do I describe this movie as just sort of like as a beginning thing before we really break it down? It's a dog movie in the sense of like, what I just described, like, oh no, it's sad, now the dog's on his own, and now what's the little girl gonna do? And oh no, and will they be reunited, and how will it work, and da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, it kind of turns into a horror film in a weird way.
Yeah, it takes a major turn, and that's not necessarily a spoiler. The trailer gives away that major turn.
Okay.
I was surprised when I watched the film how late that turn comes in.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, the trailer sells that as like the big thing in the film, but it's really the last thing in the film.
The film has a lofty 2 hours to it, and I honestly feel like it could be like an hour and a half. Like, I got it a lot, especially waiting for that turn, and then once the turn sort of hits, there was just a lot of stuff where I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Actually, this would be interesting because you didn't watch the trailer, and you just kind of went off of my recommendation. So,
Yes.
So when you watched it, where did you like when the middle of the film came around, where, you know, like, so, you know, again, we're going to be spoiling the film here, but essentially Hagen goes through a series of new owners who all abuse him in some way or the other.
Yep.
And so,
Mainly just selling him a lot.
yeah, they're basically trading, you know, between owners. And in the middle of the film, he is sold to a dog fighter, and is, you know, this lovable dog who's very, very sweet and gentle is suddenly beaten up and transformed into some sort of fighter.
Into Max.
Into Max.
Yeah,
his name is
Max.
changed.
A Mad Max, if you will.
Oh yeah. When you were watching it, what did you think? You know, where did you think this film was going?
It rode the roller coaster that I was seeing pretty close to the rails, other than the major turn. I thought it was, you know, I've seen things like this. I just thought it was going to be a more sort of visceral dog movie.
Right.
Like, even from the beginning and the way it's sort of shot, and like there's a beginning when you meet the father who's working at his meat inspection plant, like they're gutting and draining cattle hanging on hooks. And I was
My
like,
wife did not enjoy that.
and I was eating lunch, by the way. I was like, I sat down, I had my peanut butter and jelly, and I was like, oh, this is gonna... which, you know, but then actually I thought about it, and I was like, I shouldn't be grossed out by this because I eat meat all the time. And then I just buckled down and just watched it, and still ate, and I was fine.
It's a fairly tough movie to watch, right?
Yeah, like it, and maybe that's why I think it was long, because it was a lot of heartache for a long time through it, and there's this sort of turning point, and I think it happens after Hagen or Max's, I'll call the mean dog Max, even though it's the same dog. His first fight and his first kill.
Yeah.
And then it sort of turns.
It turns after that. So again, you know, just recapping the beginning, dog, you know, girl and her dog. Dog is separated from girl. Dog is sold to new owner. Dog becomes dog fighter. Dog kills another dog. Dog runs away from Sid killing spree, and then.
Well, let's pause for a second. Yeah. We're gonna build this turn up, and then we're gonna. Oh, it's a turnip. Get it?
Yeah,
You're gonna build this turnip
for what?
No, I was referencing the vegetable. No, no. So that's the dog story, right?
Yeah.
So that's not the whole thing that we're seeing. The other side of it is how the young girl named Lily is sort of going through her life, and. She is very despondent once, you know, doesn't like the father and keeps running away. She eventually starts going to like parties with like a couple older kids in her music class, and at one point she gets real low and like starts drinking. How old is she in this movie? She's like young.
I want to say 11 or 12.
I'm bad at ages.
I'm not exactly sure the age, but I feel like she's bordering on puberty.
Yeah,
right?
she's
like,
not. Yeah. So this is a young girl, and she like goes to these like raves and like drinks a bunch of vodka or whatever the hell they were drinking, and like just sits there and is like miserable. So she takes this sort of dark downward spiral. Now this is the interesting part. When I was watching it, and this is the part I was talking about, that I was like, oh, this is why they're making this movie. I saw a direct correlation from the dog's journey and her journey towards sort of this nightmare entropy, like everything in your life is shitty and it's slowly going down. You're like, well, fuck it.
Yeah.
Now the difference is, I thought that they were going to both sort of turn and be, you know, they were going to have their same term and moment of redemption like together, because I felt like the dog and Lily, or Hagen and Lily, really like were the same. It was supposed to be the same thing, the same character almost.
Right.
But what they do is Lily makes up with her father after one night of like harsh partying, and she gets picked up by her dad, and her dad, who's been an asshole pretty much the entire time, breaks down, and he's like, oh, you're an adult, blah, blah, blah. And then they start getting along. Yeah. And you're like, oh, Lily's getting better. Hagen gets brought to eventually caught by the...
No, well...
What happens after he gets away from the dogfighting ring?
He gets away from the dogfighting ring. He breaks back into the pound. Oh no, you're right. He gets caught, and then
by the dog catchers.
And then he's in a pound, and he attacks someone in a pound, and then eventually, inadvertently, lets all the dogs out, and then forms a dog kind of army.
Yeah,
it's referred to as an army,
as a dog army, and if you're laughing right now, you're not wrong, because this movie has been incredibly serious to this point, and then it's basically Hagen's greatest hits, or Max's greatest hits. Mean Hagen.
Yeah,
he goes back and kills every person that's wronged him, down to the neighbor that lied and said he bit her in the beginning.
I was like, how did he know that?
Well, that's where this movie for me falls apart.
It completely does, and it's weird that it falls apart there, because the selling point of the movie is this idea that the dog revolts against human beings,
and I'm fine with that, and I'm fine for, even if we wanted to go the Planet of the Apes sort of super smart dog, like dogs are getting, like this dog is smart and whatever, but like. They don't set that up at all. He's a dog. He's a dog as you understand dogs to be. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he becomes like Charles Xavier dog.
Yeah, the internal logic of the film falls apart.
Very quickly. And if you can't grab on, like it's if you're like, I'm using the roller coaster analogy, if that takes the sharpest turn you've ever felt, and if you can't hold on, there's no seatbelt. And I feel like the movie is going to lose a lot of people. Like, interest-wise.
Well, no, I think it's interesting. And the thing I do like about the film is it is an accomplishment in the fact that there's no CGI in this film, and the old adage, if you're making a film, don't ever work with dogs, animals and kids. And this is an animals and kids movie.
Thanks, Hungry.
But like the spectacle of 250 dogs running down the street at, it is kind of exhilarating, and it is quite beautiful, but the film doesn't narratively back it up. And I think, it doesn't quite come together. Now, and you seem to like the thing with the daughter, like kind of like exploring her her adolescence growing into a woman kind of thing.
I just thought it was very mirroring sort of what was happening to Hagen.
I didn't actually see it that way. I didn't think it was mirroring, and I actually kind of liked that their journey seemed to be very different, and hers had some nuance to it. Like it wasn't just like, oh, the dog is getting beaten up and now she's getting beaten up. She was kind of fighting back already. She was like, meeting older boys, deciding to like go to a party, running away, trying to, she's basically taking life into her own hand.
Right, but she's making shit decisions.
She's making terrible decisions.
And the dog is in shitty situations. That's I mean, like it's not, they're not both being like, now it's time for the dark path. Hagen is being forced down this path where she is just rebelling into this path.
I don't think her path is necessarily that bad. Like she doesn't do anything that is worse than you would expect a teenage girl to do.
But it's also shot very like this is rough. I'm at a discotheque and it's red light. It's very like. I
think the whole film has that aesthetic to it.
Right, but then my point is her arc.
Yeah,
does exactly what I expected it to do. Again, roller coaster. I'd be like, wee, and now we're up and we're back and she's happy and we're with her dad and everything's good. Like, oh, she dipped down into the darkness and came out, because that's sort of what happens in movies.
Yeah.
And then Hagen, Jesus, he becomes John Connor of these 250 dogs. This is my issue overall with. So the dogs run rampant down the streets of Hungary, and the populace freaks out.
Of course they do.
I wouldn't freak out. This was not the dogs. No, let's put this way. There were a couple larger dogs, but not many. Like a lot of them were lower than knee height.
Right.
If I saw 200 dogs running my way, I probably wouldn't run.
But the dogs do kind of attack, and they attack people, and they
attack people after they're running and screaming. Like, they didn't attack one person, but for a while, they're just running, and people are acting like Godzilla is coming down the street. There were people who locked themselves in their cars screaming like it was the birds. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, why is this so scary? Like, it's not scary. And the actors, it seemed like, were told, like, this is a terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's kind of adorable. And I know I'm not there, but that really took me out of it when they were acting like this is a militant, like the people were acting like the dogs were an army before we were told that the dogs were acting like an army.
It's kind of like Night of the Lepus with the giant killer rabbits.
Right.
You know, the adorable killer
And then
rabbits.
there's a couple things where like they finally call in the military.
Yeah.
And there's like a blockade set up, and like they have their guns drawn where they think the dogs are gonna go, and then one barks behind them, and they flip sides of the fucking barricade, and then all the dogs come from the other side, like they planned it.
It's funny because I think on this is a Hungarian. I wouldn't say it's an art house film necessarily, but I think it's like, you know, the director is a fan of Terminator, for example. He's a director of action movies. And this is kind of trying to play on the level of action movies.
Yeah,
and
it never got there for me.
Well, I think it's a political allegory that tries to play on the level of action movies, which you could argue Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes do as well. But the internal logic of his allegory doesn't quite hold up to the logistics of the action movie. It doesn't quite make sense. And there are turns that happen in that final third that are just all over the map for me, and you know, the ending kind of doesn't work. But at the same time, it is quite a remarkable thing to watch, and you kind of watch it with this sort of sense of awe in terms of, for a few reasons. One is the dog performance is pretty amazing. Like, you really, like, the dog gives the best performance in the film.
Yeah.
And it's very nuanced. Like, the dog
played by two dogs.
Played by two dogs, yeah. And the dog stops and will stare at something, and there'll be, you know, like, you can see it kind of working things out in its brain, and the story unfolds through the way the dog looks at something. And it's really, it's quite amazing. I think the dog gives a better performance than anyone in the film. In fact, the dog won an award at Cannes as well.
Good. No, he was great. Both of them were great.
And the main problem is the film is a two-hitter between the dog and the girl. And the girl, for me, didn't quite work. I felt her performance was kind of like, let's do angsty teenager and not emote. And that's fine for the real world, but not necessarily great in a cinematic world. I was saying I appreciated the sort of dichotomy that I saw in it. I didn't think the girl's story was particularly interesting. It's a story I'd seen a million times before. Yeah.
And it was fine. And you kind of needed to get away from the dog. I actually thought, honestly, because it stays on Hagen for a while after the car leaves.
Yeah.
The initial thing, and I thought we weren't going to see the girl again. Like, I thought it was just going to be following the dog, because it stays with him for like the next 15 minutes or something, and I was like, oh, this is
the
this
dog movie.
He finds his buddy. He finds Flag.
Yeah,
which is not Flag. Flag is the, and I think it's supposed to be Flag, but they say it in the movie. Umberto D is the old man's dog in that movie, and this dog looked exactly like him, but this time with like a little broken rope collar, and it was just like, oh my god! I mean, these dogs are separated by like 40, no, longer than that, 60 years. But it could be the same dog. This is what I wanted. And I would have no problem with the weird-ass turns of the super smart, vindictive, like, Hagen telling other dogs to kill people that attacked him with the butcher knife once, like, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
If they just, like, when it was nice and, like, Lily and Hagen were together and whatever, like, if they had just sprinkled a little bit of, this dog is smarter than most dogs. But they didn't. In fact, he was a very good dog.
Yeah.
But he wasn't super smart. There's a part in the beginning that she gets in trouble because the dad doesn't want to leave the dog in the apartment. So she takes it to her music class, and she puts him in a cabinet. And she's sitting with one of these girls she knows, and he's in there. She's like, he's going to bark. And Lily's like, no, he's not. And eventually he barks. But it takes a while. Like, that's exactly how a dog would act.
It doesn't, you're right. The logic of the final turn doesn't line up with
how we've, So especially, and this what you said might even circle back and feed into this. I didn't even think about it. The fact that the dogs give such a great performance playing Hagen, it means that, like, how do I put it? I want, like, the writing or the story arc of this character being the dog is betrayed by how good the dog, quote unquote, acts, if that makes sense. Let me back it up.
Yeah. I think it's the other way around.
Maybe I'm speaking it backwards, but just the fact that there's not enough, since the dog does such a good job acting.
Yeah.
Since I know that it could pull off, and the director could pull off with that dog a couple hints as to this dog is special.
Yeah.
In the beginning that they never do when they finally make the turn and he becomes the leader. of this pack.
Yeah.
And it's not even a pack mentality. It just it feels like an army. Like they call it an army. He acts like an army. They like follow him and stop with him and like
Yeah. And I get, like that whole thing works on an allegorical level. Like you can kind of understand like this group that has been oppressed suddenly fights
Sure.
back, and I think that has to do with Hungarian politics.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't work on an internal logic for this film, and
No.
it doesn't resonate. It just kind of feels like it feels, and I admire the director for doing this. It feels like taking your story, escalating it in a way that most films don't do. Most films kind of like get to their emotional climax and then peter out, whereas this kind of goes, no, we're gonna like escalate it beyond into some nether realm.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of it's admirable and it's interesting, and it honestly is the hook that sold me on I have to see this film, but it doesn't work in the film.
Right.
It doesn't really
That makes
play, and it's a real shame because this movie has so much going for it. Like it is very well constructed and very, very well, beautifully written, and I like that the girl has nuance to her. And even though I don't think the performance is there, and I don't think the writing around it is there, I feel like there's nuance and interest to it. Like that I haven't quite seen, and a level of, for a film that is ostensibly kind of a Hungarian blockbuster, a Hungarian action movie,
700 million, whatever Hungary's currency is.
Hungarian Florence.
Yeah, that's how much that costs.
Which is $2.5 million US. I think it just doesn't quite work on those terms, and it's a shame because then the allegory for me kind of starts to fall apart. And I'm not a big fan of the reboot of Planet of the Apes. I don't think the reboot is particularly good. I really like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but I think that those films, just on an allegorical level, work much better because they're so clear about what the allegory is, and they're so clear about how the uprising of the ape world is a parallel to whichever way you want to read it, oppression in some way. Whereas this allegory, because it's dogs, and because the film is so realistic about what dogs are and what dogs can do.
The second that they start doing things that dogs can't do.
Yeah, and they do it very suddenly.
Yeah. And a lot.
Yeah. And then other things happen, like is her name Ilsa? She seems to the main girl.
Oh, Lily.
Lily, sorry, my bad. She seems to know right away what's going on, and she knows that Hagen is behind all of it. And she's like, Hagen's trying to find me. I was like, there's no way Hagen is trying to find you, and there's no way that you know what's going on right now. So like that kind of logic falls apart, and then the film kind of it ends on an interesting note where basically we know from the start of the film that Hagen is calmed by Lily's trumpet playing.
Yep.
And so there's this frustrating thing that happens, which is that the final act of the film is Lily trying to find Hagen. And she has the trumpet in the back of her, her backpack the whole time. And she's trying to like calm him and soothe him, and she doesn't know what to do. And like there's this tense confrontation. And you just, as a viewer, you're sitting there the whole time going, just play the freaking trumpet, would you? Like we know that's what it's there for. We know that that's going to end the movie.
Yeah.
Just play the trumpet, would you? And it just takes forever, and it doesn't really work. So it's a real shame that those things don't work, because I think there's so much interest in this film. And again, I do think if you're a dog lover, you will enjoy this film, because like up until the final act, it is a fairly realistic portrayal of dogs, and the way that human beings anthropomorphize dogs, the way we kind of like.
Well, that's what I want to get into. Yeah.
Yeah, the way we kind of like see emotions in dogs that may not necessarily be there. This film like really goes whole hog with that. Probably in the great tradition of like films like Milo and Otis and I don't know Marley and Me.
Marley and Me.
Yeah. Any dog movie kind of anthropomorphizes
and some
dogs.
more than others for comedic effect, like Beethoven or the Air Buds or all that shit. Like they give them personalities.
If you like those films, but you're hungry for an adult version of those films, watch the first 2/3 of this movie.
Yeah, right.
I think it's really interesting. And then look, the film did very well and it's reviewed very highly.
It's a well-made film.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that turn just didn't work for you and me. It definitely didn't work for me.
No.
Maybe it would work for someone who really, really buys into this dog character.
It's funny, and I know I always go back to this. It's not the Avengers.
Oh boy.
Real Steel.
Real Steel.
Talking about Real Steel.
Yeah.
So the
We haven't
robot.
talked about that yet, but I know you're a big fan.
The robot in Real Steel, his turn of sort of like, is he conscious or like is he like because they kind of whatever. I'm not going to get into too much of Real Steel, but they put these incredibly subtle, you can decide for yourself or not moments like, is he glitching or is this some sort of thing like that means he has a consciousness to him? And so I've seen it done in a much sillier movie.
Yeah.
It would have been so easy to sprinkle just Hagen to have a little bit of moments where, like, even if Lily didn't see it or no one else saw it but the audience, like the dog just doing something where you're like, that dog knows shit.
There's a couple of really good moments like that. Like, I think after Hagen's first kill, you know, when he's Max and he has to fight this Rottweiler. Funny enough, I used to own a Rottweiler called Max. He kills the Rottweiler. He kind of stands over it in horror, and you're like, it's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's a great shot. And but again, like,
it's not. Yeah.
So, but then this is what I'm talking about. And I've never seen a dog kill another dog live, so I don't know if they actually do that or not.
Nor do you want to.
No,
Michael.
But
Vick.
like, but like. That to me felt super like that was the turn where I'm like, oh, dogs are people now. Like that we're anthropomorphizing.
Anthropomorphizing. I'm saying it wrong.
That's like where we're like we took a shot because we've seen a million times in movies where a guy or a girl kills someone else and they stand back. They're like, oh my god, like they have that moment, and that look in their eyes, and they stand still for a second and then they'll run.
Yeah,
that exact shot is done with a dog.
Yeah,
and the emotion is there, but it's shot in a way where it imprints that emotion on you.
Yeah.
That dogs don't do that. I've had dogs, I've grown up with dogs, and even pets in general. Like, since I've started owning, I have a cat now, and it's like we do put a lot of ourselves into these animals.
Yeah, obviously. And that's not necessarily right. Like, I have a, you know, like, as far as dogs go, I have this weird thing about crating. People crate their dogs,
right.
You know, like, and I don't know if it works or not, but people say, well, look, this is actually better for the dog. And some people say, no, it's not good for the dog because a dog, you know, would you like to be stuck in a crate all day? And so I don't really know how far the extents go, but like this film certainly asks you to take a leap of faith as far as that,
right?
You know, printing a human emotion onto the dog, because this film is suggesting that this dog is vindictive. It has memory. It has sense memory, and it can use those things to tell other dogs to be very to attack very specific people.
Right. And here's the thing, sort of where that logic of, okay, so let's say even though it does that breakneck speed turn very quickly, say you're still on board.
Yeah.
What I got is I'm like, okay, so he is remembering all these places and people that wronged him.
He can find his way back.
Why couldn't he find Lily?
Yeah.
But then I'd argue, that maybe he's just so fucking crazy that he's not even thinking about Lily until the trumpets played, and then there's sort of the end sort of thing. But like, I don't want to ruin the end.
We're ruining the whole thing.
Okay, well, like, there's a beautiful shot at the end.
Yeah.
But it's not happy.
I think it's, I don't know if it's not, I think it's happy.
No,
like there's a happy medium.
No, here's the difference. So there's a scene, the father, this is amazing. So the dogs are all coming at Lily, right? They're all coming in, and they're all in a line, and Max is like 6 feet in front of him, or Hagen is 6 feet in front. And the dad, who, oh, by the way, he gets stuck in a freezer, but then he's instantly freed. There's a whole moment where he's stuck, and then he's just out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He comes out with a homemade flamethrower.
Yeah, where did he get? No, he got that from the butcher.
It was an oxygen tank in the butcher shop, but he lit it on fire. And I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah. I was like, and that felt very Terminator to me. Yeah. And then Lily plays the trumpet, and all the dogs go from growling to like lying down and becoming very docile.
Yeah.
And then the father's worker friend who is in the building comes out and goes, should I call the police? And the father says, and the reason why I think it's a sad ending is he says, give them a little bit more time.
Because they're all going to be
They're
separate.
all going to die.
Probably. Okay, yes. From that sense, yes, I agree.
If they didn't put that in there and the father just went and lied down with Lily and the dogs, even if the dog didn't come up to Lily or do anything like that, like, you still would have had that, like, oh, they're back together moment. That's a sad ending. Those dogs in this world they've created, not in real life, are all dead. There's no way those dogs are alive. So that was the end for for Hagen.
Yeah.
And it's a sad ending.
Yeah, and you got to wonder about what the future of the world looks like for Hagen. Say for example, somehow Lily and her dad convince the authorities to like let Hagen come home with them. Like, what is the world?
He's got dog PTSD, man. Like, he's not.
So yeah, it doesn't. What about on an allegorical level? Does it? Like, I personally think that on an allegorical level, the film's lack of action coherency means that the allegory falls apart. And then, but even on an allegorical level, say we transplanted this film into the United States, and it starts. Maybe this shouldn't be a one-to-one relationship. Maybe allegory is the wrong word. But like as soon as you start saying, well, this is like. Like the director mentioned the gypsies in Hungary,
sure.
and like suddenly when you say, well, okay, gypsies are dogs, then like that allegory seems somewhat puerile, somewhat somewhat too simplified and possibly offensive as well. I don't think the allegory works in that one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But it is problematic because obviously the dogs. Like the dog, Hagen's happy state is next to Lily in a sort of companion way.
Right.
They even watch a dog, like at the very start of the film, they're sitting on top of a mountain. They watch a dog like being trained, and Lily turns to a dog and says, "I'll never make you do that." So this sort of idea of subservience is kind of played into, but it doesn't quite work.
They want you to set up that Lily and Hagen's relationship is the way that like life should be, in a sense that she's not making him do anything he doesn't want to do until she shoves him in a closet in music class, and then
he's not Marley from Marley and Me either. He's not like a problem dog.
Yeah, no, he's just a dog.
He's just a good old boy, happy dog.
Yeah, and I don't know, well, we can continue. I have something about the mutts.
Well, even okay. So if allegory on a racial or political level kind of doesn't quite work in this film. The other film that we kind of mentioned early on or teased early on was The Birds, where the birds start. In Alfred Hitchcock's film, the birds attack, and no one's exactly sure why. But we know that in this small town, it's in San Francisco somewhere, there's a disruption of power through the arrival of what's her name, Tippi Hedren's character.
Mm-hmm.
She usurps her mother's power,
usurps,
and there's a change in sexual dynamics, and then these birds seem to like act upon that in some way, and there's this sort of odd logic to that film, which is not directly parallel, but you can kind of feel the tension.
It makes sense in the weird-ass world it sets up.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen in White God as well. Like even the sort of metaphysical allegory doesn't really work.
Now, let me ask you this. This might be a little bit tangential, but why do you think the film is called White God?
I mean, there's two explanations for this. I personally think it's a play on Samuel Fuller's film White Dog, which is about a racist dog. It was about a dog that was trained by its owner to attack black people. Okay. And I think this film is a reversal of that. Mm-hmm. There's another side of it, which is that I think the director, there's an article on Salon.com, or it might have been Slate, where they talked about talking to the director, where he said White God kind of suggests, that political inference that the white God is the white person who has colonized minorities. Right. And so for the dog, this is God, mm-hmm. and it's a white person. Now, I don't think that allegory really holds up. Yeah. Just under any kind of scrutiny. Especially in a film that already has its allegories not quite holding water. Yeah. So, but those are the two things why it could be called White God. And I think, I personally like the idea that it plays more on Samuel Fuller's film a bit more, but I mean, I, again, went into it blind, and I had no idea, other than I thought that maybe God and dog was sort of just, the flip, and then I was like, well, Max or Hagen isn't white. He's like a brown dog. Well, I guess, think about it. Unless it's about Flog. Flog was white, the little buddy dog. Yeah, let's talk about the buddy dog for a second. Well, no, just before we do that, I was just going to say that the maybe if you're thinking about it from a dog perspective, and it's this, you are looking at God if you're a dog and you haven't, you're thinking about the human world. The human world is not for you. It's a place that is terrifying. Like, I love there's almost a Ted Thunderbuddy moment in this where where the white dog that you were talking about,
Let's just call him Flog because he doesn't have a name,
and Hagen are sitting on a couch like terrified of thunder. And I'm like thinking about the perspective of the world that they have when if you're a dog looking at the human world. So if like your owner is God to you, because that is the person who navigates the world for you and protects you and looks after you. So white God kind of plays into that idea and the idea of rebelling against God. So maybe the political allegory has to do less with politics and more to do with religion. I don't know. It's possible to stretch it out that way.
Yeah.
It's what I like about this film that like maybe if we were talking about the overall difference between your and I approach to film is that I think a lot of times we're talking about open text versus closed texts. And what I mean by that is certain films are like suggesting a very, very narrow range of ideas and that they're basically saying this is only about this thing. Whereas there are other films which are open text, and I think this is, The Birds is a really good example of an open text, which is that it could be read one of a million ways.
Sure.
And I think this is a film that even though I don't think it's at particularly functions, I think it's an interesting open text.
I'll agree with you. It's an open text. It's an open text sort of experience and story. The problem with it is once the text is open, right, and you're looking and you're reading this you can interpret this thing a million different ways. Yeah. Then it basically changes the language on you 2/3 through, and you're just you're like, oh, it's this now. Like it's too sharp of a turn. I know we've been using things. It's just too sharp of a turn to work with not enough setup beforehand. But both sides of it are good, and you can look at it. If you can just hold on real tight around that bend, you can enjoy it on multiple levels. You want to talk about political, you want to talk about religious sort of iconography or just sort of like the thought process behind everything. But what really kneecaps this film is that fucking turn, man.
It's a shame too because the turn is the hook.
Yeah.
And I like the hook. Yep. I like this idea. Yep. But again, I was sold on the trailer, which sells the whole film on this turn, but it doesn't.
And it
doesn't hold on. I've said that enough times now.
And also, there's a sense of convenience in the last third of the film that the rest of the film does not have. Nothing is convenient, and it's very real. And then all of a sudden, everything is like everyone's exactly where they're supposed to be. Yeah. And it starts falling into the things I feel like you hate about like Marvel movies and things like that, like where it's just sort of like, oh, well, this guy's obviously here because plot.
Yeah, play the trumpet. Just play the trumpet.
Right. So then there's the part where Flog, the little buddy dog, that they Hagen and Flog become friends. But then like Flog finds Lily before Hagen does.
Yeah.
And then Flog fucking like tries to lead Lily. Flog has never met Lily.
Yeah.
Which this means that psychically Hagen has told Flog, man, I really want to find my owner.
Yeah.
But they don't set that up at all. And it's just, and I'm like, at that point, I think I muttered, and I do this on occasion. You might have witnessed. I just under my breath, I was like, "Fuck you." I'm just like, no, like, and moments like that break for me an otherwise very enjoyable experience, and it's hard for me personally to get back on once that's happened. And again, everyone knows I like silly, stupid movies, but I like the silly, stupid movies that set up the rules of whatever silly, stupid world that they've done.
Yeah.
And stick with them. If you're gonna break your own movie's rules, there better be a good fucking reason, and you better do it masterfully.
Yeah. And I think like the movie again, it's really weird to talk about White God in comparison to Mad Max Fury Road, but Mad Max Fury Road is a film that holds its internal logic and its allegory really smartly. And it's a shame that White God doesn't because this premise is so potent.
Yeah,
and it's such a beautiful idea.
You want to hook a human audience? Audience. There's no quicker way than doing it with a dog.
And again, this dog is beautiful.
The dog's awesome.
Yeah, I want this dog.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that it doesn't hold up, and it pains me that because I chose this movie because I'm getting a little bored of the summer blockbuster fare, and I wanted to see something smaller and more intimate. And it starts out smaller, intimate, and it's like it does this beautiful thing, which I love in films, which is that it shows, it doesn't tell. Like we understand the world of the father through his action.
Yeah.
We understand what is, and we understand who he is. Like there's a beautiful scene where like a little blood drop has dropped onto his shirt, and he can't wipe it off.
From the butcher shop.
And he can't wipe it off, and you can see he's kind of a beaten man.
Yeah.
It's beautiful little touches like that I really enjoy because they allow me to kind of like think through a film.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those in this.
Yeah, that first 2/3 are great.
Yeah, and then it turns into a horror movie. There must not be a lot of scary things in Hungary.
You think that
because there's 200 dogs that are roughly knee level running at you. Everyone's acting like it's War of the Worlds just flying down.
I mean, just on a visceral level, I think there is. It's a major accomplishment, this film, just in terms of the fact that there are no CGI dogs, as far as I know. There's probably CGI augmentation in some.
They might have cleaned up a shot or something.
Probably, I'm sure. And so these were dogs that were all stray dogs that were trained to perform, and in a very realistic way. Like the dogs don't seem to, apart from when they start killing people, they don't seem to like perform in any sort of non-dog-like way, and it is really masterfully done.
It's the testament to the trainers and the way that they shot with these dogs, and actually, and you gotta love a story that, and I'm talking about sort of the meta story, like these dogs all now have homes, and they're trained, and they're actors now. They made it, and they were just street dogs beforehand. I mean, my first dog growing up, my dog Duke, he was literally a dog we found at a junkyard, and we fed him spaghetti, and then he just came home. Like I have an affinity for sort of street or mutt type dogs. This is a little tangential, but like. Breeds aren't a thing, right? Like people made breeds.
Yeah.
Like, and
there's a great photo of like what a particular breed looked like in the 1900s versus what it looks like now. And it's completely different.
But even then, like breeds aren't like. We still created in the 1900s breeds. We were doing that. We like dogs were dogs, and then they took the tall ones and stuck them with the tall ones, and they took the short because they wanted to. It was like all the rage.
Darwinian theory in motion.
It's not even Darwinism. It's what's it mean?
Not Hitler's freaking
eugenics.
Eugenics.
But in a weird way, it might be the wrong word. But it's sort of the same thing. Like, all of the small dogs with this type of tail, they can only fuck each other and all this stuff. And that's how we have breeds. And we all know that is a more unhealthy dog than if you get a mutt. Just because you're inbreeding these dogs over and over and over. Bulldogs can't even have birth naturally. They have to give birth by C-section because we've made them so because their skulls are too big. Like we're like
inhuman.
It's this weird awful thing. So I've always said whenever my friends are looking for dogs or whatever, and I had a purebred lab that I had because it was a neighbor that didn't treat it well, so we took it.
Right.
And Duke. And so Duke was the junkyard and Ben was the lab. Ben was a sweetheart, but dumb as a fucking post. And Duke was just the smartest fucking dog. And maybe I was imprinting stuff again as a kid, but like, I'd watch him do things. He was kind of tricky. They'd both bury their bones in the backyard, right? They'd bury. And Duke would look up and look at Ben where he buried his bone, and then he'd continue. And then when Ben was away, he'd get up, dig up Ben's bone and move it to where he buried his bone. I watched him do this. And then the next day, Ben's back like, what the hell?
There's a beautiful oatmeal cartoon comic about, like the relationships between humans and dogs.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there is something in there about like, I don't understand this creature. I've seen it literally like poop, eat its poop, vomit, eat its vomit, and then poop it again and eat it again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get this creature whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's the beautiful thing. Like, dogs are like fiercely loyal, and there's not like you spend 5 minutes on Reddit's aw thread
AWW
and you will just like fall in love with these animals because they're lovely, and there's nothing like dogs and babies are a big thing. Like look up dogs and babies on the internet,
and we won't even get into cats on the internet.
Oh yeah, well they just don't give a fuck.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah, this film would not work with cats.
No.
But so there's a lot. This film could easily hook you, and if it hooks you hard enough, maybe that turn will work for you. But it didn't work for you. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. If we're coming to recommend this film or not, if we're coming to say should people watch this movie, You can watch it on iTunes right now, by the way. I'm fairly certain, without saying, this feels like a film that'll pop up on Netflix within a few months.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
Like that.
It's just got enough notoriety, and it will be popular now. I think it's 82 on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that.
Yeah, it's reviewed very, very well.
Yes. That'll be on Netflix.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could give it a rent now if it sounds like it's something that interests you. Like, again, I think you put it really well. If you want the adult version of like dog movies that you're sort of used to or you grew up with granted a weird little turn at the end, it's definitely worth a watch. It's also something, although if you do rent it on iTunes, this pissed me off.
Oh, the subtitles?
Oh my God. The subtitle track treated it like it was a closed caption track, in the sense like faucet running, like up top, and like cart squeaking. And I'm like, no, like you could put dog growling. That's fine.
Yeah,
because that whatever, but like don't put like water drips. And
so that's interesting as well, though, because I think the film, like it won a major prize at Cannes. Mm-hmm. This trailer came out, and everyone freaked out about the trailer when it came out. Like it was like, oh my God,
I'll have to watch the trailer.
It looks amazing, because no one knew anything about this film. But then I think maybe it feels, just evidenced by the fact that it plays with closed captioning instead of just subtitles, means that it was probably bought and kind of just got distributed as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
I have no background information to suggest that otherwise, but it feels that way.
Yeah,
and it's a shame, because I think there's stuff to like in this film.
Absolutely.
And there's stuff you haven't necessarily seen before, and it is very well constructed.
Yeah. Now, I will say this: if you're the type of person that just like can't stand any sort of animal violence, don't. It's not graphic. There's some stuff, but like again, I know people that like. If you do, there's a scene when the transformation from Hagen to Max is happening, where the trainer guy, whenever he's mean to him, he puts on glasses and a hood to look different and not have him. It's actually
pretty horrific,
it's terrifyingly smart.
Yeah.
Basically, and he beats him. He takes him out of the cage and beats him. And you don't obviously see him beat him, but you see the whole raising of the club and then the chain shaking against the wall that Max is attached to. And that I know tons of people that could not sit through that. So if that's the type of imagery that's not like gory, there's some blood not in that scene, but you know what I mean? Like, if that type of imagery you can't handle, then do not watch this movie.
Yeah, we had a friend over to watch the movie last night, and I assured this person that, it would be fine, and then that scene happened, and I suddenly felt very bad, and I was like, ooh, what have I gotten this person into? Right. But I think the film does a smart job of, like, giving you violence, so you can see the brutality of the world, but not, like, not going over the board with it.
It does, it does a fantastic job of that, and also still setting you up the entire time, feeling like there's still a chance you're going to see something horrific. It sets you up with that feeling where you're like, oh, even like after they did the whole chain scene, I'm like, for a minute, I'm like, oh, they're not going to show anything, and then the dogfight happens. I'm like, oh, they're going to show everything.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, that was a good sort of pull for me, like in a sense of like, I could see anything on screen in this world right now, and then the dogs become fucking sentient, and then it's all over.
I think the handheld camera really plays well here because it matches the idea of seeing the world from the dog's point of view.
There's a lot of POV dog shots.
Yeah, and then it also like unsettles the viewer. And I think like there's a scene where the dog is where Hagen is trying to cross the street.
Oh God,
and it's brutal to watch, but it's beautifully done with this handheld camera because it really feels frenetic. You're like, cars are crossing, and it's like. It's just.
If you can watch that scene of Hagen trying to cross the fucking freeway and you don't instantly feel terror and bad for that dog, then you should be put to sleep.
Well, it's funny because you're watching it going, wait, how did they do that from just a logistics point of view? Like, how did they get the dog to actually like almost cross the street and then back up and then almost cross?
Well, obviously there's no real. That's probably where some CG is the cars.
I don't know. I think they're real cars.
And then you can train a dog, as they did, to do any action on command. Like they can do
But I guess that's what's remarkable about this dog's performance.
Yeah,
it's not just like sit, stand up, roll over or anything.
Yeah.
It kind of like it moves towards a thing and then backs away as it thinks about it and then backs.
The dog is the best actor in this film, and it's interesting. It's got to suck to be the actors in this film because the dog is like, oh, it's Hagen's movie. Like,
I hope
no
this
question.
dog found a beautiful, like a loving family and
Was Hagen one of the dogs as well that they rescued to train, or was he an actual?
I think they might.
Dog?
I mean, this dog has to carry the movie, so I'm sure this dog came
two
from
of them.
Yeah, it came from somewhere.
I'm sure he's very well taken care of.
He should be.
And it's nice. The other dogs, it's good. It's a good meta story. And if
I guess the thing is, I don't think it necessarily. Oh, you mean the actual the survival
meta,
of
the fact that they took street dogs, trained them,
Right.
and then gave them good homes is a good meta story. That's not anywhere in the movie. That's just what happened.
Right.
By process of making the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's there's stuff that there was a the friend who was over with us as an opera fan, and we were sort of talking about Tannhauser, the Wagner opera that's mentioned in the film.
Oh, that the kid ditches, that Lily ditches.
Yeah, and it's again, that's an interesting artistic allegory as well, because Tannhauser, as far as I can tell, is the struggle between sacred and profane love. I'm reading directly from the Wikipedia page. I am not an opera person at all. Although we watched a brilliant documentary about Robert Lepage's staging of the Ring Cycle at the Metropolitan Opera afterwards, and that looked amazing to me. That's just an aside. There's this amazing documentary. It looks incredible.
Well, if you can do asides, I'll say Ant-Man was really fun.
Yeah, well, see, I ditched. So actually, you saw Ant-Man and you saw this.
Yeah.
Now, do you think there would be more for us to talk about? Because
No. There's way more to talk about, and there's a reason why we didn't do Ant-Man. And Ant-Man, it's because it's good, and it's, for instance, it's the stuff that I like, but it's the same sort of stuff. We could really dive into it, as a lot of people have. But we want to be the only podcast about a movie.
No, we are the only podcast about.
Well, I know that's what we are.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we wanted to do it, so we are.
Yeah.
And we just thought that we would do a film that, really deserved, to have one group of people just talk about it and get the word out officially.
Well, should this? I mean, in the episodes we've done so far, this is the point where we're breaking from the discussion about White God a little bit and being more of a meta discussion about this podcast. And we've done a lot of action movies, and then we've thrown in two very, much smaller art house films. You would argue, A Pigeon Sat on the Branch Reflecting Its Own Existence, and White God. How do you feel like the conversation between you and I kind of like balances between those two things?
This is the only podcast about the only podcast about movies.
Oh my god, are we talking Tang?
Yeah. I think there's things to be said about both, but I also feel like the last few films we did, we would hit similar points talking about Ant-Man, because some are blockbusters, and Ant-Man in particular would just be Marvel stuff, where like Terminator at least had certain sort of interesting science-y, what if it did whatever, Jurassic World, again, but they're all very similar. Ant-Man would have felt like to me more of the same, where this is a much more interesting topic. Had we not done 3 action movies before, had we just done Pigeon, I would be like, no, of course we're talking about Ant-Man. I just wanted to kind of vary it up.
But interestingly, I think there is a thematic through line in this film, which is that this film feels like an action movie done by an art house director, right? And it doesn't quite work, but it is kind of like, to me, it kind of feels like someone trying to do something on the level of spectacle of Planet of the Apes, but in a really gritty, realistic way with a more realistic allegory. It feels like that last act is really hitting an action movie kind of beat.
Well, it wants to, but it doesn't. I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't.
It
you're
wants
right.
to.
Yeah. So it's not like, a pigeon sitting on a branch reflecting its own existence is nothing like Ant-Man or Mad Max Fury.
It's nothing like anything.
Whereas this feels closer in tone. So for our listeners, if you want to branch out of the films that you're watching, and I'm hoping, that you're watching things other than just Jurassic World and Terminator Genesis and Ant-Man, that sort of thing. Even though there's nothing necessarily wrong with those films, I don't think this film, White God, is necessarily too far of a stretch in the opposite direction.
No, this would be a good toe dipping for people that want to get out of the summer sort of grind.
Yeah.
again, I wish it was something where I could be like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever and you should totally see it.
Drop everything and go see
yeah,
it. But it's not.
It's
It's not that. Unfortunately,
I would still see Ant-Man again before I watch this movie again.
Yeah, and it's an obnoxious thing on my part, and it's a snobby thing on my part. But I hope that when we discover like a film like White God, that we're finding something that is, like we're getting into uncharted territory slightly for you and I, and we're finding some gem, and so far in the two that we've discussed, we've been somewhat lukewarm-ish on them. There are a couple of others I would love us to try, like The Tribe, which is I think it's a Serbian film that's entirely in sign language.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I really want to try that.
Mm-hmm.
Or Court, the Indian film about the court proceedings about a song. Like those things seem interesting.
Don't you love, audience, that he's trying to guilt me into seeing more different films while I'm on air, so I'll be like, oh, yeah, of course we can. No, we're watching the entire Marvel universe in order, and then we're going to talk. No, obviously I'm fine with seeing other stuff. I just want to, we're making it varied, and I hope that you enjoy that we're, not you, Shahir, but the audience enjoys that we're kind of trying to do sort of different-y type things. Also, let's just wrap this up real quick, and then we'll do all of our housekeeping. At the end of the day, if you like animal movies, and like we said, you want to see an adult one, I think this is worth your time. Just know going in that you're in for one hell of a neck snap.
Well, it's an interesting thing, though, actually, because if you think about it, hopefully they've watched the film before they listen to this podcast. So,
true,
because we've spoiled the whole thing. But I think even though that we've spoiled the whole thing, I still think it's worth watching.
If you want to see an amazing dog performance,
well, watch this movie.
I can't think of a better one.
I mean, the other film was Beginners, which I enjoyed, the film a couple of years ago, and The Artist, which I haven't seen, but I know everyone talks about the dog in that film.
I mean, I know it's no Air Bud 2 Golden Receiver or Retriever or whatever. I don't know. It's the football one. No, go if you like dog movies and you can handle a little bit of doggy violence.
A bit of the old ultra doggy violence.
Yeah, I think it'd be worth your time. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about White God and movies in general. If you find another one, please let us know, because we'd love to. I'd love to listen to a movie podcast. They just don't exist.
Actually, I have to admit, I've been moonlighting a little bit, and a friend of mine, Ivan Kanda, has a podcast called the Reviewed Podcast, which is fantastic. And I don't know how
what's it about.
I think it's about movies. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me because we're the only podcast about movies.
Yeah, so...
But listen, the guys over there were great. I was on there talking about Terminator. So if you don't know, you can look it up on iTunes.
Like the action figures? Like the Turner action figures at the comic book?
Well, I think that's what I was there for, because I'm an expert on action figures.
I know.
Actually, I'm an expert on book to movie adaptation. Movie to book adaptations.
Okay.
So I read the Terminator novella, and then
that makes sense.
Yeah,
okay.
I talked about
All
that.
right, everything's clicking now.
But check out Reviewed Podcast. What they do is they take an older movie that's been out for a while and just see, does it still hold up? And it's great because I recently bought a projector, so I have this the ability to watch movies on a giant screen now.
Look at Daddy Warbucks over here.
Well, la-dee-da, Mr. Fancy Pants. Who did I buy the projector screen from?
That would be me.
But it's I'm just going through this thing right now where I'm watching older movies that I watched on VHS growing up, and I'm now getting a chance to watch it on the big screen. So check out Ivan's podcast, the Reviewed Podcast. It's great. I was on it this week talking about the original James Cameron Terminator.
Nice. The action figures. No.
The novella.
The novella, whatever you said. No, that's cool. Where else can people find you, Shahir?
You can find me at do people still say www?
You can.
All right. www.shahirdaud.com, which is SHAHIRDAUD. I have a very cool music video coming up, hopefully within the next few months, that I hope you guys will enjoy.
Nice. And you can find me at MatthewKroll.com. That's MatthewKroll. No dot in the middle. Don't know why I put that. MatthewKroll, one word.com. Also, Instagram, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ, and Twitter, Emperor MSK. I can't even remember all my handles. We have a
Gmail account as well.
We do. Give that out.
onlymoviepodcast@gmail, spelled like it is. And we have a Twitter account, onlymoviepod.
And like every week, we will be giving away 2 movie tickets.
Yes, we will. All you have to do is email us in. and we will give you the detail. Once you do, we will pick the email we like and make you do a little review for us on your iPhone.
You're going to do some work.
Yeah, but you'll get 2 free movie tickets to an AMC movie theater of your choice.
Whoa. There's so many of them.
In which you could go see Mission Impossible.
Oh yeah, that's coming
Ant-Man.
up. Also, we're going to be trying. I know we missed last week. We're going to be trying to keep in a regular schedule for our programming. I know it's
summer hours.
We live in a busy world, and excuses and time, and I'm tired. But no, we're gonna try to keep this going.
We love doing it.
Yeah. So we hope you love listening to it. Anyway, and also I think I one thing I do want to promise and hopefully try. I think we should maybe do a double feature week. Maybe not even have newer movies or whatever. We could go to an older one or a classic, but we should make the other person watch a film that we're pretty sure they're gonna hate,
right? And
then discuss it, because I think you guys like listening to us fight from the feedback that I've gotten. And so far, today we're like, I agree with you, sir.
Yeah. It has. I was surprised. I mean, I guess it's not surprising because we're both avid movie watchers, and I think we respond to the same sort of things.
Right.
And this was a film where it's so glaringly obvious what's wrong.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the only podcast about movies. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd, and I let the dogs out.
You did, but I'm not going to
get those back in.
Yeah, you should put them back in because Florence, she's just going to tell us basically that the dog days are over.